Welcome to Warblog. Today we're looking at the siege of Kobani, or Kobani, however you want to say it. It's quite interesting actually. I always laugh when I say that because they're all interesting, and it seems a bit odd, but it is interesting because it sort of takes you back to a time. I mean, they're fighting the remains of ISIS now. They're hardly a fighting force. I mean, they had to be holed up in cities, but this was well, these ones say ISIS. It's actually ISIL, Islamic State in Levant or whatever. They just haven't done these counters properly. Anyway, that doesn't matter. But they're actually on the offensive, and they got armour. And you might have seen some of the videos years ago, and it is years ago, where they had their tanks driving around in circles, and they had tanks, and they were blowing, even blew themselves up in them, trying to fire them just for show. But anyway, they got some armour here, so it's interesting that they're actually that large and they're on the offensive. And there's Kobani now, and obviously the border with Turkey. So we'll just sort of jump straight into it. Now, there's some interesting elements to this, but essentially, I'll just go over quickly what sort of happens. So essentially, obviously, there's this sort of front line here that you can sort of see, and that is the sort of the area that these Kurds have. And as you can see, they're surrounded on all sides, but there's the Euphrates here as a sort of natural barrier. So there's this sort of front here, obviously, and then there's sort of, you know, obviously it's really just this part and this part, or, you know, obviously as you can see, but it's, you know, when you compound it like that, there's not a lot to it. It's really just sort of a front along here, and especially as it gets smaller, and it got smaller, they basically took about sort of 350 villages in total. I mean, if you look at the Wikipedia, or I think it gives you sort of a more exact set of dates for when this circle got smaller. But they pretty much sort of got to about there, and even maybe about there. And so what happens is that when they capture all these villages, and there's a stonking amount of refugees that come out of them. Every time you go into these, you'll actually activate 2 refugees, and so you've got camps up here. Now, they don't really achieve much. It's not that they can fight or they really get in the way, but because I put them in because it was a fairly significant feature of this sort of this offensive, that there were sort of 40,000, and there was starting, you know, there was some riots in Turkey, not because they were rioting there, but just sort of in general, the chaos, you know, resulted in these sorts of things happening. But then, as they sort of get to here, they get a lot of reinforcements from the Peshmerga and also the Free Syrian Army. And I'm doing also from memory. I'm trying to look at the thing I've got, but I did that from memory. And they get the US support, and the US actually drops supplies, and the ISIL is so close that some of the supplies land in ISIL territory, and one that did, the US then went and bombed it. Another one landed just sort of outside of the Kurdish sort of area, but they managed to get that back. But so the US are dropping supplies, and it's actually in the Wikipedia it says how much they were dropping. So it's quite interesting how you know they got it down to that sort of degree, and so it really did seem a bit tight. But I think the thing that sort of possibly changed things. It sounds really good. Oh, you know, the Peshmerga and the Free Syrian Army went to support, you know, the Kurds and their last thing. But they're basically it says the Allies, but I think it's mainly the Americans, but there are probably other ones, provided air support, and so they started bombing, and they've actually got sort of you know, write-ups about how many airstrikes they carried out on such a day, and you know, and basically they started to actually push ISIL back. So in the same way that they've advanced, they actually get pushed back. And at the end of it, it says they basically pretty much lose everything they gained. And it describes Kobani as a turning point in the war. And it does strike me as interesting, and you know, from that point, because I think, and I'll probably get arrested for saying this, but I think if the Americans or the Allies hadn't have intervened, then you would have had a new nation state, the Islamic State, and I don't want to say too much about that, you know, but I think that would have happened because they were going to win. They were going to take Kobani out, and then the US basically lent their air power, you know, in support of the Kurds. So that's basically what happened. So it's sort of interesting, you know, what could have happened there. And obviously, you know, ISIL are, you know, notorious and known for their evil acts, and I don't want to doubt that, not implicitly, but the thing is, that's what we're told. And I think one of the things I was thinking the other day, and I maybe shouldn't say this, but you know, it's just my natural normal thoughts, but it seems that, you know, the victor always writes the history, and the history is being rewritten, and obviously we've got pictures of all the atrocities that you know, these ISIL people did, and you know, all the testimony from the people of these villages and these towns that were saying how bad it was, you know, in Mosul and Aleppo and you know, Raqqa under ISIS, etc., etc. But that is the victors writing the history. I don't want to support ISIL in any way, or ISIS in any way on that, but I think when it comes down to, when you look at this battle, this was, you know, you could see the ebb and flow of the war, and you know, and the implications of, you know, the US and Ally involvement in the war, and what that changed. So you know, I think that's interesting, and that's one of the things that makes this interesting. You know, I'm definitely not trying to say anything else in that narrative. So we're going to play it anyway. I'm not going to play it all. I definitely don't want to play it all. Now, I don't know whether there's too much ISIL. I sort of suspect that there is. And I'm certainly not going to get to the stage where I'm sort of taking Kobani out. And I think that I might make some more adjustments. But when you actually look, it says there are, in Wikipedia, it says there are just 2,000 Kurds, and that's not a lot. You know, I mean, there were more than 2,000 here if you look at each company as being sort of 200. You know, 5 would be 1,000. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So that would be 2,000, and then you've got 1, 2, 3, 4. So it's probably not a lot over. But the thing is, there's a gap here, and if I was the ISIS player, I would be quite a little bit more tempted to go straight for Kobani instead of, you know, that's a wargamer sort of thing. You know, why not just, because there's no zones of control there. I could probably do that. So I probably will, and I have been thinking about it. Maybe I should have done this before I started the game, but I sort of didn't really think about it. But I was thinking that I might either add a few more units so that they've got more than 5, so that even if they do, they will only be attacking at once, and maybe just put another unit there, and maybe just make this a bit tougher. So in this playthrough, we might find that they win too easily. So we'll see. Now, I've sort of not made these bridge hexes too tough. I mean, we could move these there and it would be really difficult to be fighting across the river. But for some reason I sort of haven't. Okay. We've still got movement with these. So this will demonstrate the ease with which we can do this. Now they're using their mechanised units here. This is actually probably one of the toughest battles they're going to have. A 3-to-1 and a DR. So they take Talic, and it's not, Talic's not an objective for some reason. Maybe I should go back and do that. We can even possibly follow that up. No more movement with them. Well, let's just push it. Let's just push this one through first. That's going to be a tough one because there's exactly the same as here, but without the mechanised. Before I do that, let's just look at this one here. Yeah, they got the DE 7-1, but because of the new rules, I mean, I don't want to bore you with this because I know I've said it a few times now, but not too many times. Because of the new rules, they didn't actually get eliminated, but they've got the 3 depressions, which weakens them up, so they're still there. They're still able. I mean, if you can imagine that was a DE, that whole front from there to there would now be completely open. I'm definitely going to have to give the Kurds a few more units to sort of just push things out a bit. But anyway, this... yeah, they all went in there. We've got the refugees. Let's just do this battle here because that's a refugee town as well. This will probably be a 2-1, but we might get a 3-1. Ah, I know why. Look at that. They were defending on... They were 5. Well, they got an exchange, so that was lucky. Why did they not defend on a 5? Maybe they did, I don't know. I think actually that knocked things up a bit. That's interesting. You know, so well, another DE and another retreat. Ah, they're always going to go in that sort of area because if I have these units, I've got the zones of control. That's the only one where I don't have a zone of control. So, not that it's a problem, but generally speaking, they do retreat to the most applicable areas, but obviously not into a zone of control. So, if I get that 3 surround in any instance, that's what's going to happen. I mean, for example, we could look at this one here. This village, they will either retreat there, there, or there. So let's just see where they do retreat. When because there's no, they both retreated there. This is interesting because we don't quite have enough to contend with everything. I mean, for example, here. It's going to be a 3-1, I guess. Yeah. So what we're getting is a lot of refugees now. Now I'm going to move there. But he could retreat there or there. It'd be interesting to see where he does. I mean, it's not guaranteed because it should only be a 3-1. Ah, look, he got eliminated. We got the DE, but we also got that elimination, which opens that up. If we're going to do that, we really need to I mean, we don't need all of that, but I just want to get the surround. So he moved into there. It's quite interesting actually, because if I had wanted to get a full surround, I would have had to have attacked and occupied that hex, which would have meant attacking a stack with refugees in it, which is a moral dilemma. But I'm sure for most wargamers that won't really count. But refugees are also different in the way they are affected in combat, in that they're not automatically eliminated now. They go by the same rules as all the other units, so the DE doesn't affect them. There's just a 10% chance, etc., etc. So we're really pushing through here, but we've broken through here. We haven't actually managed to do that. If we thought about it a little clearer, we might be able to balance some forces out to shift something from here over here. I'm not going to push too far forward with the rest of this, but we've got some of this, which I'm going to leave there, because I don't really want to sort of maximise what I could do here. I think I'm happy with what I've done. I mean, I could maybe move a few other things, you know, if I had to. But I'm not going to play this all the way through. That's for sure. I don't have time for that. Now we've got an exchange over there, haven't we? So it could be a toughie if the Kurds have a few more units, but once they start to lose them, it's going to change rapidly. So I will give them some more units and some more in there. It takes the reinforcements don't start happening until turn 10. So we'll just wish through to the Kurd turn. So turn 1 for the Kurds. Hopefully the next turn will be a turn 2. If anyone's keeping track, they'll notice that the turn counter has been now resolved after 2 years of me saying, oh, I'll do that, I'll do that. Okay, well here, let's get the refugees through first. And that's it. So we'll stay with the refugees. Or not. And then there's zone control there. Well, we can push these guys down here. And maybe fall back slowly. Yeah, definitely need some more Kurds, just to sort of give them even the front line there. Okay, please be turn 2 now. Yes, it works. Okay. So, now one of the things, caveats I would sort of put on this is that you've got to sort of focus on taking all the villages and things out. So here because of the way zones of control worked, they could have gone there or there, and which is what they did, so it's sort of balancing out a little. However, if we wanted to continue moving, because we've got 4.2 movement to get to this village, we'd have to fight our way through the refugees. So they, you can sort of say, well, are they in the way? Well, they are to some extent, but that said, we still haven't conquered this village, so we've got to stay there anyway. Again, we're going to create more refugees here. Some of them are on the Turkish side, some are on the Syrian side. And again, it does sort of block our way. We're taking that village. So let's put in another unit there to make it go a little faster. Let's move him over here into this village. So now we've got loads of refugees in there. And again, more refugees. Now here, let's put him in there and him in there to capture these villages. He can go there. I mean, this is a brutal massacre of these refugees who happen to be on the front lines. And that was a DE because they had nowhere to go. With a 1, they were all lost. Let's see what we can do here. DR. And let's push in to this village. Oh, no, the units of movement there, so with these guys, creating even more refugees. So I'm going to quickly go on to the next turn. These refugees are going to cross over into Turkey and head over towards one of these camps. These refugees are going to head in the same sort of direction. These ones are going to try and run away. It's hard to sort of move them back without sort of getting entwined with refugees. Let's try and broaden this front line out. So it's definitely difficult. Our front line is more like this now. Obviously more like that. I think we'll do a few more, especially I think we do a lot more here to sort of then give you the option to reinforce in areas. Maybe some, just another bunch with trucks and things, just to sort of give you the option to sort of reinforce here, or just to give it that sort of turn 10 feel, because I think we're going to get there a lot quicker. So I'm going to sort of jump through it a little faster. We're not going to get up to any reinforcements, but He hasn't even moved, has he? So we're at 1 there, so we only need 1 more unit in there, 1 more unit in there, 1 more unit in there, so we can definitely start pushing on this line. We're a bit weak actually, and the thing is I'm a bit tired, I've got a headache, and so I don't really want to do too much thinking, but if I was thinking, my thinking kept on me, because I'm going to cut it short in a bit. I'll be thinking, well, hang on, of these resources, can I push, say, this group here into this centre? Because I don't really have enough to take these units out. I mean, I could maybe use these 2 units against these, but that's still not a lot. Here I've got more overwhelming odds, but I think there's still scope for sending battle groups this way. I think this group should be okay here, so it's not really that much of an issue, but this is actually quite open here, and I think that some of this should come in this direction, but I'm not really going to do that. I'm not going to do any more actually. I'm going to add a few more sort of Kurdish units, just to sort of just to give that sort of, I'm not saying it should have a balance, but I think it feels like it should have a balance, because they actually fought an active retreat, although they didn't. They're obviously falling back. I think that maybe just a few more will make that fall back a little slower, up to sort of the turn 10. And also, I really sort of want to stop that sort of the possibility, for example, here of just going through there and taking Kobani straight away. I mean, you could do that, and I don't think that should really happen. So maybe putting in putting out lots of reinforcements all around here. Just to sort of stop that from happening at all in the first few turns anyway. But hopefully that should tweak your interests. I think one of the key thing here is just seeing how all these refugees affect things. I mean, I think the thing that they're doing here, they're confusing the matters, because you sort of think there are bigger forces, but there's only 2 units here, all the rest are refugees. That's not a stack, there's a stack of refugees. And we've also seen some loss down here, and these getting in the way. And there's also the possibility you could use the refugees as a sort of shield. I don't think the Kurds sort of did anything like that, and I don't think refugees sort of act like that. You can't sort of say, the refugees are going to take the most direct route they can away from danger, and that's the sort of rule that you should work with. But because they, you're moving them as part of your turn, you could sort of move them so you've got a nice line of refugees as a sort of defensive force, and then putting your units behind them, forcing the ISIL player to sort of spend time getting through them, which of course doesn't make any sense. That's not how they would behave. But I always advise sensible gameplay. You do things that are right, etc., etc. So, but that's it. I hope you enjoyed that. I'm going to sort of upload this now and take some aspirins. And I'll speak to you later. Cheerio.